Michelle Carter stood in the middle of Terminal B at O'Hare International Airport, her eyes scanning the crowded space around her. People were rushing to their gates, dragging suitcases behind them or chatting loudly into phones. The air smelled faintly of coffee and cleaning products, mixed with the distant hum of announcements over the intercom. Michelle adjusted the strap of her leather tote bag on her shoulder and glanced down at the boarding pass in her hand. It was a first-class ticket, purchased by her company for this trip to San Francisco. Business class wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity after weeks of back-to-back meetings and late nights finalizing deals. She had earned this seat. Every single one of those miles she'd logged traveling across the country, every presentation she'd nailed despite exhaustion, every sleepless night spent strategizing ways to grow her startup, all of it led to moments like these. Moments where she could step onto a plane, settle into a comfortable seat, and let someone else take care of the details for once. But today, something felt off. As Michelle approached the gate, she noticed the line moving slowly. Passengers shuffled forward, handing over their tickets to the attendant stationed there. When it was finally her turn, she handed the woman her boarding pass with a polite smile. "First class," Michelle said, more as a confirmation than a question. She didn't expect anything less. The attendant glanced at the ticket briefly, before looking up at Michelle. Her expression shifted slightly, just enough for Michelle to notice. "I'm sorry," the attendant said, her tone clipped. "There seems to have been a mistake. This flight is fully booked in business class." Michelle frowned. "That's not possible. My company confirmed this booking days ago." She pulled out her phone and opened the email confirmation, showing it to the attendant. "See, it clearly states—" "I understand," the attendant interrupted, her voice firm now. "But we're unable to accommodate you in business class. You'll need to board economy instead." Before Michelle could respond, another passenger stepped forward, a white man about her age, wearing a tailored blazer and carrying a briefcase. He handed his own boarding pass to the attendant, who scanned it quickly. "Business class," he announced confidently, almost smugly. Without hesitation, the attendant nodded and gestured him through. "Right this way, sir." Michelle watched as he walked past her, pausing only briefly to give her a quick, unreadable glance. Then he disappeared through the curtain separating business class from the rest of the cabin. For a moment, she stood frozen, unsure how to react. Was this really happening? Had she been denied access to a seat she'd paid for because of— what? A clerical error? Or something deeper? "Ma'am?" The attendant's voice broke through her thoughts. "You'll need to move along so we can continue boarding." Michelle clenched her jaw but forced herself to nod. There was no point arguing here, not when dozens of people were waiting impatiently behind her. She stepped aside, clutching her boarding pass tightly in her fist. As she made her way toward the economy section, she couldn't help but feel the weight of stares from other passengers. Some looked curious, others sympathetic, and a few seemed outright judgmental. She found her assigned seat near the back of the plane, wedged between a teenager scrolling through videos on his phone and an older woman knitting furiously. Michelle sank into the narrow seat, trying to ignore the discomfort of being squeezed into such tight quarters. Normally, she wouldn't mind flying economy. She'd done it plenty of times before. But today felt different. Today it felt personal. As the plane taxied down the runway, Michelle stared out the window, watching the cityscape blur into streaks of gray and green. Her mind raced with thoughts of what had just happened. She knew discrimination existed. She'd faced it before in subtle and not-so-subtle ways throughout her career, but this time it stung differently. Maybe it was because she'd worked so hard to get where she was. Maybe it was because she'd hoped that success would shield her from these kinds of indignities. Whatever the reason, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about a missed upgrade. It was about being told yet again that she didn't belong. By the time the plane reached cruising altitude, Michelle's frustration had simmered into determination. She pulled out her laptop and opened a blank document, typing furiously as ideas began to form. What if she could create something better? Something that didn't rely on outdated systems and biases. The seed of an idea took root in her mind, growing stronger with each passing minute. When the flight landed in San Francisco several hours later, Michelle stepped off the plane with a renewed sense of purpose. She didn't know exactly how she would do it yet, but one thing was clear. She wasn't going to let this incident define her. Instead, she would use it as fuel to build something extraordinary, something that would change the game entirely. And, as she walked through the terminal, her heels clicking against the polished floor, Michelle allowed herself a small private smile. They thought they could ground her, but they had no idea. They were about to meet the storm she was capable of, unleashing. The next morning, Michelle sat in a quiet corner of her favorite coffee shop, staring blankly at the foam swirling in her cappuccino. Her mind was still replaying the events of the previous day, the humiliation at the gate, the indifferent stares of strangers, the sinking feeling of being told she didn't belong. But more than anything, she kept thinking about what came next. How could she turn this anger into action? What could she do to make sure no one else ever felt the way she had? Her phone buzzed on the table, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Lisa Monroe, her best friend since college and someone who always seemed to know exactly when Michelle needed support. "Hey," Lisa said cheerfully as Michelle answered. "You free right now? I'm grabbing coffee and I figured you might need some company." Michelle hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Yeah, actually, I'm already at Brewhaven, corner table by the window." "Perfect. Be there in 10. True to her word, Lisa arrived within minutes, carrying a tray with 2 fresh lattes. She slid into the seat across from Michelle and placed one of the cups in front of her. "Okay," Lisa began without preamble. "Spill it. What's going on? You've been texting me cryptic stuff all night." Michelle sighed and leaned back in her chair. For a moment, she debated downplaying the incident, brushing it off as just another minor inconvenience in a long line of them. But Lisa wasn't the kind of person you could lie to, not easily anyway. So instead, she told her everything. The rejection at the gate, the man who'd breezed past her into business class, the simmering frustration that had followed her home. Lisa listened, quietly, her expression shifting between shock and outrage. When Michelle finished, Lisa shook her head. "That's messed up. Completely messed up. Have you thought about calling them out publicly? Like posting about it online or something?" Michelle frowned. "I don't know. Maybe. But honestly, I'm not sure if that's the right move for me or for my company. People are already skeptical enough about startups led by women, especially Black women. If I start making noise about this, it could backfire." Lisa nodded slowly, tapping her fingers against her cup. "Fair point. But you can't just let it go either. Something like that. It eats away at you if you don't deal with it somehow." "I know," Michelle admitted, running a hand through her hair. "And trust me, I've thought about it a lot. Last night I even started jotting down ideas for, well, I guess you could call it revenge." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Revenge? That doesn't sound like you." "It's not revenge," Michelle corrected quickly. "Not really. It's more like showing them they're wrong. Proving that they underestimated me big time." She paused, glancing around the cafe to make sure no one was listening too closely. Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice. "What if I built my own airline?" For a second, Lisa just stared at her wide-eyed. "Wait, seriously? Like buy planes and fly people around?" Michelle nodded. "Yeah, well, sort of. Not exactly like the airlines we have now. Something different. Something better. Imagine an airline where everyone gets treated equally. No business class, no economy. Just one cabin, one experience for every passenger. And we could use technology to make it cheaper, faster, safer. No BS fees, no hidden costs. Everything transparent." Lisa blinked, processing the idea. "Okay, but isn't that kind of impossible? Airlines are huge operations. They cost billions to run." "Not necessarily," Michelle replied, her tone growing more animated. "Think about it. We wouldn't need pilots. We'd use autonomous planes powered by AI. No crew salaries, no human error. Plus, we could design the planes ourselves, make them lighter, more fuel efficient. Cut out all the middlemen who jack up prices. It's risky, yeah, but not impossible." Lisa tilted her head, studying her friend carefully. You've really thought this through, haven't you? Not completely, Michelle admitted. But I've got the basics. My team at the startup is working on drone tech right now. That's literally half the battle. If we pivot, focus our resources on scaling up instead of building drones, we could pull this off. In fact, she trailed off, pulling out her laptop and opening a new document. I've already started sketching out a plan. Over the next hour. Michelle laid out her vision in detail, explaining how the airline would work, how much money they'd save by cutting traditional costs, and why the market was ripe for disruption. Lisa listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or offering suggestions. By the time Michelle finished, Lisa was grinning. This is insane, Lisa said finally. Totally nuts, but also kind of genius. If anyone can pull it off, it's you. Michelle smiled, though there was still a flicker of doubt in her eyes. It won't be easy. Actually, it'll probably be the hardest thing I've ever done. But if it works, Lisa interrupted, you'll change the game forever. And those jerks at the airport will look pretty stupid. Michelle chuckled softly, imagining the faces of the airline staff and that smug businessman if her plan succeeded. But she knew it wouldn't be just about proving a point. This was about creating something meaningful, something that could help millions of people feel valued and respected when they traveled. You should tell your team, Lisa urged. Get them excited about it. Start small. Maybe pitch it as a side project first. See how they react. Michelle nodded. Yeah, I'll call a meeting tomorrow. If they're willing to take the leap with me, we might actually have a shot at this. As they left the cafe later that afternoon, Michelle felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement bubbling inside her. She knew the road ahead would be tough. There would be doubters, setbacks, moments when she'd question whether she was crazy for even trying. But for the first time in days, she felt like she had a purpose beyond her frustration. This wasn't just about getting back at an airline that had wronged her. It was about building something bigger, something that could last. And as she walked down the bustling city street, her steps quickening with determination, Michelle allowed herself to dream a little. Someday soon, she thought, people would be lining up to fly with her airline. They'd talk about it at dinner parties, post pictures of their flights on social media, rave about how different it felt from anything else out there. And maybe, just maybe, the industry would finally realize it couldn't ignore people like her anymore. She glanced at Lisa, who gave her an encouraging smile. You've got this, Lisa said simply. Michelle nodded, feeling a surge of confidence. Yeah, she said, I think I do. The next morning, Michelle arrived at her startup's office early, her mind buzzing with ideas. She had spent most of the night refining her vision for the airline, jotting down notes and sketching out rough plans. Now, as she walked through the glass doors of the building, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was it, the moment when she would share her bold idea with her team and see if they were willing to take the leap with her. Her company, Aeronova Tech, had been working on advanced drone technology for delivery services. It was a promising field, but Michelle knew that pivoting to autonomous passenger aircraft would be a massive shift. Still, she believed in her team's ability to adapt. They were some of the brightest minds she'd ever worked with, and if anyone could help turn her dream into reality, it was them. By 9 a.m., everyone had gathered in the conference room. There were 8 people total, including Marcus Lane, a young programmer known for his innovative thinking, and Rachel Nguyen, an aerospace designer who had previously worked on cutting-edge aircraft prototypes. Michelle stood at the front of the room, staring at the faces of her colleagues. Some looked curious, others slightly puzzled. No one knew why she had called this emergency meeting. Thanks for coming in, Michelle began, smiling warmly. I know this is last minute, but I need your full attention today because what I'm about to propose is, well, it's big. She clicked a button on the remote, and the first slide of her presentation appeared on the screen behind her. It showed a sleek, futuristic airplane gliding silently across a blue sky. What if we stopped building drones, she said, pausing for effect, and started building planes instead? The room fell silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus raised his hand hesitantly. Planes, like actual passenger planes? Michelle nodded. Exactly. Autonomous passenger planes. No pilots, no crew. Just advanced AI systems handling everything from navigation to safety protocols. And here's the kicker. We eliminate class distinctions entirely. Every seat offers the same comfort, the same amenities. One cabin, one experience for every passenger. Rachel leaned forward, her brow furrowed. That sounds incredible, but also incredibly complicated. Do you have any idea how much regulation we'd face, or how expensive it would be to develop something like that? I do, Michelle replied calmly. And I'm not saying it'll be easy, but think about it. We're already developing autonomous systems for our drones. Scaling those systems up to handle larger aircraft isn't impossible. It's just a matter of resources. Plus, we can design these planes ourselves, making them lighter, more fuel-efficient, and cheaper to operate than anything currently on the market. Marcus scribbled something on a notepad, then looked up. So, you're talking about disrupting the entire aviation industry? Exactly, Michelle said, her voice firm now. Legacy airlines rely on outdated systems and inflated prices. We strip all that away. No baggage fees, no hidden costs, no discrimination based on ticket type. Just affordable, efficient, and inclusive air travel. The team exchanged glances, clearly intrigued but still skeptical. Finally, Rachel spoke again. Okay, let's say we go for it. Where do we even start? Michelle smiled, glad to see their interest growing. We start by breaking it into phases. Phase 1. Finalize the design of our first prototype plane. That means collaborating closely with aerospace engineers, testing materials, and ensuring compliance with safety standards. Phase 2. Develop the AI system that will control the aircraft. That's where you come in, Marcus. You'll lead the software team. Phase 3. Secure funding and partnerships. If we present this right, investors will jump at the chance to back us. And Phase 4? Asked another team member, a quiet engineer named Daniel. Phase 4, Michelle said, her eyes lighting up, is launching our first flight. Publicly. We'll prove to the world that this isn't just a pipe dream, it's the future of air travel. The room buzzed with conversation as the team debated the feasibility of the project. Some were excited by the challenge, while others expressed concerns about timelines and risks. Michelle listened patiently, addressing each question and objection with calm confidence. She knew they needed time to process the idea, but she also sensed that many of them were starting to believe in its potential. After nearly 2 hours of discussion, Michelle wrapped up the meeting. I won't lie to you, she said. This is going to be hard, really hard. But I truly believe we can do it. Together we can create something that changes the game, not just for us, but for millions of people who deserve better. So I'll leave you with this. Are you ready to take the leap? As the team filed out of the room, Michelle noticed Marcus lingering behind. He approached her desk a few minutes later, his expression thoughtful. You know, he said, when I joined Aeronova, I never imagined we'd be doing something like this, but honestly, I kind of love it. It's insane, yeah, but it's also exactly what the world needs. Michelle grinned. Good, because I'm counting on you to make the impossible possible. Over the next few weeks, the office transformed into a hive of activity. Teams worked late into the night, brainstorming designs, running simulations, and troubleshooting technical challenges. Michelle threw herself into the project, often staying longer than anyone else. She collaborated closely with Rachel to refine the plane's aerodynamics, consulted with Marcus on the AI algorithms, and reached out to potential investors to gauge interest. One evening, as Michelle sat alone in her office reviewing blueprints, Lisa stopped by with dinner. How's it going? Lisa asked, setting a paper bag on the desk. Michelle sighed, rubbing her temples. It's going. Slowly, but it's going. The team's amazing, they're putting in so much effort, but there's just so much to figure out: regulations, funding, public perception. It feels like every step forward comes with 10 steps sideways. Lisa handed her a sandwich. That's how it always is with big ideas. Remember when you first started Aeronova? Everyone told you drones for deliveries wouldn't work, and look how far you've come. Michelle smiled faintly. Yeah, but this is different, bigger, scarier, and more exciting, Lisa added. Think about it. You're not just building a business, you're building a movement. People are going to rally behind this once they see what you're doing. Michelle nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Lisa was right. Yes, the road ahead was uncertain, but that uncertainty was part of what made the journey worthwhile. Each obstacle was an opportunity to innovate, to prove that nothing, not outdated industries, not systemic biases, not fear itself, could hold her back. By the end of the month, the team had made significant progress. They finalized the initial design of the prototype plane, a sleek single-cabin aircraft capable of carrying 150 passengers. The AI system was still in development, but Marcus assured Michelle that they were on track to meet their goals. Meanwhile, Rachel had begun reaching out to regulatory bodies to ensure compliance with aviation standards. One afternoon, Michelle called another team meeting to update everyone on their progress. As she stood at the front of the room looking at the faces of her colleagues, she felt a surge of pride. These people weren't just employees, they were partners in this audacious endeavor. Together they were proving that innovation wasn't just about technology. It was about courage, determination, and the belief that a better world was possible. We're not just building planes, Michelle told them, her voice steady and strong. We're building wings, for ourselves, for our passengers, and for anyone who's ever been told they don't belong. Let's keep pushing forward. The team erupted into applause, and for the first time in weeks, Michelle allowed herself to relax, if only for a moment. The journey was far from over, but she knew they were heading in the right direction. Someday soon, the world would see what they were capable of, and it would never be the same again. As Sky Unity Airlines moved closer to its launch date, the pressure mounted. Every day brought new challenges, technical glitches, regulatory hurdles, and even attempts by competitors to sabotage their progress. But Michelle Carter refused to let anything derail her vision. She poured every ounce of energy into making sure everything was perfect for the big day. This wasn't just about proving herself. It was about showing the world that change was possible. One afternoon, Michelle walked through the hangar where the prototype plane was being tested. The aircraft gleamed under the bright lights, its sleek design a testament to months of hard work. Engineers buzzed around it, running diagnostics and double-checking systems. Marcus Lane stood near the cockpit, typing furiously on his laptop, while Rachel Nguyen inspected the fuselage, ensuring every detail met safety standards. "How's it looking?" Michelle asked, approaching Marcus. He glanced up, pushing his glasses higher on his nose. "The AI systems are stable. We've run hundreds of simulations and everything checks out, but..." He hesitated, glancing at Rachel. "But what?" Michelle pressed, her stomach tightening. "There's been some pushback from regulators," Rachel admitted, joining the conversation. "They're questioning whether autonomous planes can truly handle emergencies as well as human pilots." Michelle frowned, absorbing the news. It wasn't unexpected. She knew they'd face resistance. But hearing it now, so close to launch, felt like a punch to the gut. Still, she forced herself to stay calm. "What do we need to do to address their concerns?" Rachel pulled out a tablet and showed Michelle a list of additional tests the regulators wanted them to perform. "It's not impossible," she said, "but it'll take time, maybe more than we have before the launch." Michelle clenched her jaw, staring at the plane. They couldn't afford delays, not now. Investors were already watching closely, and any setbacks could shake their confidence. More importantly, passengers were counting on them. She had promised the world something revolutionary, and she intended to deliver. "Okay," Michelle said finally, her voice steady. "We'll do whatever it takes. Work overtime if you have to. I'll talk to the regulators myself and explain why this technology is safe. We're not backing down." Her determination inspired the team. Over the next few weeks, everyone worked tirelessly to meet the new requirements. Marcus and his software team ran even more rigorous tests, simulating every imaginable emergency. scenario to prove the AI's reliability. Rachel collaborated with aerospace experts to reinforce the plane's structure, ensuring it could withstand extreme conditions. Meanwhile, Michelle took on the task of dealing with regulators. She flew to Washington, D.C. to meet with officials from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. Sitting across from them in a sterile conference room, she presented data, videos, and testimonials from industry leaders who supported her project. Her passion was undeniable, and slowly, she began to win them over. "We understand your concerns," Michelle said during one meeting. "Safety is our top priority too. That's why we've built redundancies into every system. If one component fails, another steps in immediately. Our planes aren't just advanced. They're designed to protect passengers better than anything currently in the sky." The FAA representatives exchanged skeptical glances, but agreed to review the updated test results. By the end of the session, Michelle left, feeling cautiously optimistic. She knew they still had a long way to go, but at least they hadn't shut her down completely. Back in Chicago, Michelle faced another challenge: online trolls. As news of SkyUnity spread, anonymous accounts began targeting her personally. They posted old photos of her, mocked her appearance, and spread false rumors about her company's finances. At first, Michelle tried to ignore it, focusing on the bigger picture. But when the attacks started affecting her team's morale, she decided to fight back. Lisa Monroe came to her rescue once again. Using her platform as a journalist, Lisa published an article exposing the smear campaign and highlighting Michelle's achievements. The piece went viral, drawing widespread support for Michelle and silencing many of her critics. Messages of encouragement poured in from strangers, colleagues, and even celebrities who admired her resilience. "You've got this," Lisa told Michelle during a late-night phone call. "Don't let them distract you. Focus on what really matters, the launch." Michelle nodded, though Lisa couldn't see her. "You're right. I won't let them win." With the regulatory hurdles gradually clearing and public support stronger than ever, Michelle shifted her attention to preparing for the big day. She worked closely with her marketing team to create buzz around the launch, releasing teaser videos showcasing the plane's features and inviting influencers to experience a test flight. Passengers began lining up to book tickets, eager to be part of history. Finally, the week of the launch arrived. The entire team gathered at O'Hare Airport, where the event would take place. Reporters, camera crews, and excited travelers filled the terminal, buzzing with anticipation. Michelle spent hours overseeing last-minute preparations, making sure every detail was flawless. From the ceremonial ribbon cutting to the boarding process, nothing could go wrong. The night before the launch, Michelle found herself alone in the hangar, standing beside the plane. Its polished surface reflected the dim overhead lights, and for a moment she allowed herself to marvel at what they had created. 2 years ago, she had been humiliated at this very airport, told she didn't belong. Now she was about to introduce an airline that would redefine air travel for millions of people. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. There was no time for sentimentality. Not yet. Tomorrow was the culmination of everything she had fought for, and she needed to be ready. As she turned to leave, Marcus appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her one. Michelle smiled gratefully. "Thanks. What are you doing here so late?" "I could ask you the same thing," Marcus replied with a grin. "Just wanted to check on the systems one. Last time. Everything's good to go." They stood there quietly for a moment, sipping their coffee and admiring the plane. Then Marcus spoke again. "You know, when you first pitched this idea, I thought you were crazy. But now, seeing all this, I'm glad I believed in you." Michelle chuckled softly. "Me too. Thanks for sticking with me, Marcus. None of this would have been possible without you, and the rest of the team." The next morning, Michelle woke up early, her nerves tingling with excitement. She dressed carefully, choosing a navy blue suit that made her feel powerful and confident. As she drove to the airport, she replayed the past 2 years in her mind, the struggles, the victories, the moments of doubt and triumph. Today wasn't just about launching an airline, it was about proving that resilience and innovation could overcome anything. When she arrived at the gate, The scene was electric. Passengers milled about, snapping photos and chatting excitedly. Reporters jockeyed for position, microphones and cameras at the ready. Michelle took a deep breath, reminding herself why she was here. Then she stepped forward, ready to make history. In just a few hours, the world would witness the rise of SkyUnity Airlines, a symbol of inclusivity, affordability, and technological advancement. And Michelle Carter, she was ready to soar. The day had finally arrived. After 2 years of relentless work, countless sleepless nights, and more challenges than anyone could have imagined, SkyUnity Airlines was ready to take flight. The launch event was being held at O'Hare International Airport, the very same place where Michelle Carter had been denied access to business class all those months ago. It felt poetic, almost like fate stepping in to rewrite history. Michelle stood near Gate 32, surrounded by reporters, cameras, and cheering passengers. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and nerves. This wasn't just another milestone. It was the culmination of everything she had fought for. Every setback, every doubt, every moment of frustration had led her here, to this moment when she would prove that change was possible. As the crowd buzzed around her, Michelle took a deep breath and reminded herself why she had started this journey. It wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about creating something meaningful, something that could make people feel valued and respected, no matter who they were or where they came from. And today, she was going to show the world exactly what that looked like. A tall man in a dark suit approached her, microphone in hand. He introduced himself as Greg, a reporter from one of the major news networks. "Ms. Carter," he began, "what does this moment mean to you? How does it feel to be standing here today?" Michelle smiled, her eyes scanning the eager faces around her. "It means everything," she said honestly. 2 years ago, I experienced something at this very airport that made me realize how broken our aviation system is. But instead of letting that experience defeat me, I decided to use it as fuel to build something better. Today isn't just about launching an airline. It's about showing the world that inclusivity, innovation, and affordability can coexist. Greg nodded, clearly impressed. "And what makes SkyUnity different from other airlines?" "It starts with our mission," Michelle explained. "We believe air travel should be accessible to everyone without barriers or biases. That's why we've eliminated class distinctions altogether. Every seat on our planes offers the same level of comfort and amenities. Our flights are powered by advanced AI systems, which not only make them safer, but also reduce costs significantly. Those savings get passed directly to our passengers, making air travel affordable for families, students, seniors, anyone who needs it." Her answer earned applause from the nearby crowd, many of whom were holding SkyUnity branded tote bags and commemorative pins. As Greg stepped aside to let another reporter ask a question, Michelle noticed Lisa standing off to the side, grinning proudly. She gave her best friend a quick thumbs up before turning back to the microphone. "Now," Michelle continued, addressing the entire room, "I want to thank the incredible team behind SkyUnity. None of this would have been possible without their hard work and dedication. To my engineers, designers, marketers, and everyone else who poured their hearts into this project, you've shown the world what we're capable of. Thank you." The applause grew louder, echoing through the terminal. Michelle glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost time for the inaugural flight. She signaled to the event coordinator, who handed her a pair of golden scissors. With reporters snapping photos and passengers clapping enthusiastically, Michelle stepped up to the ribbon stretched across the boarding bridge. "This is just the beginning," she said, raising the scissors high above her head. "Here's to a future where everyone has the opportunity to soar." With one swift motion, she cut the ribbon and the crowd erupted into cheers. Passengers began lining up to board the plane, their faces glowing with anticipation. Each one received a warm welcome from Michelle and her team, who handed out small gift bags containing snacks and personalized thank you notes. Among the travelers was a young mother with 2 children, a retired couple celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, and a college student heading home for winter break. Seeing these diverse individuals come together for this historic flight, filled Michelle with a sense of fulfillment she hadn't felt in years. Once everyone was seated, Michelle joined the pilotless cockpit to oversee the final preparations. Though the plane operated autonomously, she wanted to be present for every step of the process. Marcus Lane sat beside her, monitoring the AI systems on his laptop. "Everything looks good," he reported, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "All systems are green, ready to take off." Michelle nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "Let's do it." At precisely 11:30 a.m., the engines roared to life, and the plane began taxiing down the runway. Passengers pressed their faces against the windows, watching as the cityscape blurred into streaks of color. When the wheels lifted off the ground, the cabin erupted into cheers. People hugged strangers, raised glasses of sparkling water provided by the crew, and marveled at the smoothness of the ascent. Back on the ground, Lisa watched the live stream of the flight on her phone, tears streaming down her face. She texted, "Michelle, you did it. You really did it." Meanwhile, aboard the plane, Michelle walked through the cabin, greeting passengers and answering questions about the technology behind Sky Unity. One little girl tugged on her sleeve, wide-eyed with curiosity. "Are you the boss?" she asked innocently. Michelle knelt down to meet her gaze. "Yes, I am. Why do you ask?" "Because you're awesome," the girl replied matter-of-factly, earning laughter from the surrounding passengers. By the time the plane landed in San Francisco 3 hours later, social media was ablaze with posts about the experience. Passengers raved about the ergonomic seats, the seamless check-in process, and the overall sense of equality on board. Hashtags like "Fly with Michelle" and "Sky Unity Revolution" trended worldwide, drawing attention from both supporters and skeptics. Legacy. Airlines scrambled to respond, issuing statements praising innovation while quietly scrambling to adjust their own practices. Some even attempted to mimic Sky Unity's model, introducing budget-friendly options and promising improvements in customer service. But none could replicate the authenticity and vision that defined Michelle's company. That evening, Michelle returned to Chicago, exhausted but triumphant. As she sat in her car outside her apartment, she allowed herself a moment to reflect. 2 years ago, she had been humiliated at an airport gate, told she didn't belong in business class. Now, she had built an airline that welcomed everyone, equally, and changed the industry forever. She thought back to the little girl on the plane, her innocent words still ringing in Michelle's ears. Yes, she was the boss, and she had proven that being the boss wasn't just about running a company. It was about leading with purpose, breaking barriers, and inspiring others to dream bigger. As she climbed out of her car and headed inside, Michelle knew this was only the beginning. Sky Unity had taken its first flight, but there were countless more destinations ahead, and she couldn't wait to see where they would go next. In the months following its launch, Sky Unity Airlines became more than just a new player in the aviation industry. It became a movement. Passengers weren't just booking flights, they were sharing stories of how the airline had changed their travel experiences. Social media was flooded with photos of happy travelers posing next to the sleek modern planes, captions praising the comfort and affordability of the service. News outlets couldn't stop talking about Michelle Carter, the visionary CEO who had turned adversity into innovation. Legacy airlines struggled to keep up. Some tried lowering prices temporarily, but it wasn't enough to compete with Sky Unity's efficiency and inclusivity. Others attempted to adopt similar technologies, rushing to develop autonomous systems or redesign cabins, but none could match the seamless integration of technology and customer experience that Michelle's team had perfected. Critics who had once dismissed her idea as unrealistic were now forced to admit that she had not only disrupted the industry, but redefined it entirely. One evening, Michelle sat in her office overlooking the Chicago skyline, scrolling through emails from grateful passengers. One message stood out, a letter from a single mother named Angela, who wrote about how Sky Unity had allowed her and her children to visit family for the first time in years. "Before your airline, I couldn't afford to fly," Angela wrote. "But because of you, my kids got to meet their grandparents, Thank you for making air travel accessible to people like me. Michelle read the email twice, her eyes misting over. This was why she had done it, not for fame or fortune, but for moments like these. She forwarded the note to her team with a simple subject line, "Why we do what we do." The success of Sky Unity didn't come without challenges, though. Powerful forces within the aviation industry continued to push back, filing lawsuits alleging patent infringement and lobbying regulators to impose stricter rules on autonomous aircraft. But Michelle remained unfazed. Her legal team worked tirelessly to counter every claim, and public support for Sky Unity only grew stronger. People saw through the attempts to undermine the company. They recognized that this was about protecting outdated systems, not advancing progress. Meanwhile, Michelle focused on expanding Sky Unity's reach. She partnered with governments and nonprofit organizations to bring affordable air travel to underserved regions around the world. Remote communities that had never had access to reliable transportation suddenly found themselves connected to major cities, opening doors to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. It was a ripple effect far beyond what Michelle had initially imagined. One day, while attending a tech conference in New York, Michelle delivered a keynote speech that left the audience buzzing. Standing on stage under bright lights, she shared her journey, from the moment she was denied access to business class to the creation of Sky Unity. Her voice was steady but passionate as she spoke about resilience, creativity, and the power of turning obstacles into opportunities. "They tried to ground me," she said, palettes of emotion coloring her tone. "They told me I didn't belong, but instead of letting that define me, I chose to redefine them. Because here's the truth. When someone tells you no, they're really handing you a chance to prove them wrong. To show them what's possible when you refuse to give up." The room erupted into applause, and afterward dozens of attendees lined up to speak with her. Entrepreneurs, engineers, students, all inspired by her story, wanted advice on pursuing their own dreams. Michelle stayed late into the night answering questions and encouraging others to take risks. By the time she left the venue, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Sky Unity wasn't just changing air travel, it was inspiring people to dream bigger and aim higher. By the end of the year, Michelle's impact reached even further. Time magazine named her one of its most influential people, hailing her not just for revolutionizing aviation, but for proving that diversity and inclusion could drive innovation. In her profile, the magazine highlighted how Michelle had overcome systemic barriers to create something extraordinary, paving the way for future generations of women and minorities in leadership roles. Despite the accolades, Michelle remained grounded. She knew the work was far from over. There were still countless challenges ahead, expanding globally, navigating regulatory hurdles, ensuring sustainability, but she faced each one with the same determination that had brought her this far, and she did so knowing she wasn't alone. Her team, her supporters, and even strangers who believed in her vision stood beside her every step of the way. On a crisp autumn morning, Michelle stood on the tarmac at O'Hare Airport, watching another Sky Unity plane ascend into the sky. The sun was rising, casting golden light across the horizon. She thought about everything she had been through, the rejection, the sleepless nights, the moments of doubt, and realized how far she had come. That incident at the gate hadn't broken her. It had ignited a fire within her, one that refused to be extinguished. As the plane disappeared into the clouds, Michelle smiled softly. She pulled out her phone and opened a blank text document. At the top, she typed 2 words, "Next chapter." Whatever came next, she was ready. The world had seen what she could do when pushed to the edge. Now it was time to see what else was possible. Sky Unity Airlines had taken flight, carrying not just passengers but hope, ambition, and the promise of a better future. And Michelle Carter? She was just getting started.